This is the CreaseCast.
Cody, do you know what Philip Grubauer's save percentage is right now? Just off the top of your head, do you know what it is?
Ooh, I would probably guess it's like 887 or something.
887. That's you know what? That's very positive of you to look at that. The answer is
no.
It's 882. Like, it's not that far different, but in NHL, by NHL standards, that's a hole that you're in. It has been a very bad year for Philip Grubauer.
Holy crap.
Say the
That's
least.
like shocking. That's like if they had like a team that was actually built like well, that's the kind of save number that would get you sent to the AHL for like conditioning stints. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Like, it is you would not be on the main, you would be in the press box right now. You would be, you'd be in, I guess right now, if I'm remembering correctly, are they in Chicago? Are they sharing the Chicago Wolves with the Hurricanes right now? Because
It's either they're sharing, I think they're three-way sharing a team with Carolina and Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Florida got their team back. I think Florida went back to their original. Or you might be right though, actually, because they're the Springfield Thunderbirds, are they?
Yeah,
not?
correct.
Because they would be Chicago Wolves as the Hurricanes, but
okay,
they get the Coachella Valley Firebirds in 2023. I think is when they start. But good Lord, welcome to the CreaseCast, our first CreaseCast of 2023.
Happy New Year's,
or 2022.
Everybody.
God, I keep doing that. I keep confusing 2022 and 2023.
It'll be 2023 soon enough.
Well, a year of mistakes is already over. A year of no mistakes is already over. I've done that right there. But yeah, the Canucks are coming off the fact that they won 5-2 over the Seattle Kraken. Yet another win. They have won 8 of 9. They've got a 9-game point streak. They're absolutely cooking.
And it still doesn't matter because they dug themselves such a hole at the start of the season.
I mean, it might matter soon. They're actually getting pretty close here. But compare that to the Kraken, for example. And I know we're starting off on a bit of a Kraken heavy thing, but it's just kind of the reason why is just because it's kind of shocking. Not just how bad the Kraken have been, but frankly, the thing is they're not even the team itself in front of Philip Grubauer and their goaltending actually apparently hasn't been all that terrible. They've been okay. They haven't been great. They haven't been the playoff team that some people thought they were going to be.
It's like the overwhelming review. It's kind of funny. It's like the inverse of what people thought. Like a lot of people, like myself included, were like, oh, they're going to cobble together like a really good defense out of the expansion draft and out of free agency. The forward groups will probably be rough on scoring, but if they angle themselves correctly at the expansion draft, they could become a lot deeper than you think, especially when the all likelihood is they are going to take Yanni Gourde from Tampa, who is one of the best picks. And then of course, Yanni Gourde misses the entire first 3 weeks with an injury. And then the one thing that the Seattle Kraken management group were banking on, the goaltending, which a lot of people thought with the expansion draft, with guys like Capo Kakkonen and Vitek Vanacek being available, there's no way they could screw this up. It should be a layup that they have good goaltending and okay defense, and maybe scoring they figure out later. And instead, everything is okay except goaltending. Goaltending has been, as you said, fucking atrocious. Not a single goaltender has got above an 892 save percentage. All their goals against averages are higher than 3. They got nothing going on in the back end. It's it's good for Canucks fans because the last thing they wanted was another Western Conference team to come into the league and immediately head straight to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Another Pacific Division team, as well, right in your backyard. Geez.
That would have been an ugly look, especially considering the Canucks started this year completely falling off cliff and immediately canned all of their management team. So, this would have been the worst year probably for ownership to have the Seattle Kraken come in and be stars while they commit to a second organizational restructure. That would have been just a horrendous look. So at least they can I mean, it's a good thing they did it now, but while Seattle's still bad, instead of wait another year and hope for the best, which is what a lot of people were worried they were going to do with the Benning regime. But we didn't get that, fortunately. But yeah, I can't believe like 882. That's
882.
so bad. But
Yeah.
I think you even pointed this out when we were doing our expansion draft coverage that Philip Grubauer is as good as he is in Colorado because he's playing behind the Colorado Avalanche and a really well structured defense. But there is no guarantee that that skill or that save percentage is going to translate to the Seattle Kraken. Whereas I
Right.
think a lot of people just kind of did the lazy thing of I saw Grubauer's J Fresh card with Colorado and it's a blue line with a high wins above replacement. So that means he's going to be awesome no matter what. But
Yeah.
you, my friend, pushed back on that. So kudos to
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Well, you know what? Like, I don't want to take like pleasure in saying like that Philip Grubauer is done poorly because I actually quite like Grubauer and like in terms of like what he brings to a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right in the sense of I think a lot of people thought that they were going to get another Marc-Andre Fleury here, whereas Fleury's
Yeah.
track record is very different than Grubauer's, where he has the long track record of playing for teams that have sometimes underperformed, and he's done well despite that. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
he has the successful, like the long-term history. Like even in like this year in Chicago has been kind of a weird mulligan for Fleury even. And even then he's gotten him better as the season's gone on for them too. Like, and yeah, you like just looking at things right now, out of every goaltender in the NHL to play more than 9 games,
Mm-hmm.
he is dead last in save percentage. He is dead last out of that group. In front of him is Kevin Lankinen, who's played 11. Jonas Johansson for Colorado has played 9. Jonas Corposalo has played 9. And Chris Drieger, the other Seattle Kraken goalie, who's played 9. And God, I pointed this out the other night. Never forget that the Kraken could have had Capo Kakinen, who I believe is much higher on this list right now
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of these guys. Vitek Vanacek, who has a 910.
They
Yeah,
had him. They did
they
pick
had
him,
him.
and then they gave
They
him up for
had
a
Vitek
second
Vanacek
pick.
and then traded him back to the Capitals. Like, I don't know why they did that. To this day, I don't understand that pick. Like, why that they would take such a good young goaltender who
Yeah.
clearly like is on to something there
Yeah.
and just give it back for very little to nothing considering
It
what he did last year.
it shows how poor like the Seattle management group was with like even prioritizing asset management or like returning like good quality assets for what they could get. Like they could have had Vlad Tarasenko for like half the year and then flipped him at 50% retained for a huge haul if they really wanted to. Same
Yeah.
with Carey Price. Like I mean, obviously Carey Price is going through something right now, but like you could have still taken him, flipped him at 50% like after this year or whatever and recouped a bunch of assets. Instead, like they could have gotten Vanacek and Kakkonen and they would have been
And they
cheap.
still
They would have been good. They would have been like still better than what they have. But instead, they committed something like nearly $10 million to two guys who had never really been proven as starters. It's
and and
crazy.
and for the record, they could have had Grubauer and those two. Like they didn't have
Yeah.
to necessarily choose. Like if you remember when we did our expansion draft that I really pushed for the idea of you should draft 5 goaltenders. If you can
Yeah.
take 5 goaltenders, you should draft 5 because
And then flip them around
and
the
flip
league.
one and flip some of the older guys in particular. Flip a guy, either flip like Joey Decord if you don't feel that you can take him.
Yeah.
If you don't feel that you want to keep him in the AHL as your number 3, or you take or a guy like Drieger who has like that one good year in Florida. You can go in there and say, well, there might be some other teams that are really desperate for a goaltender right now that might want to take a chance on him for a rich price. So you draft them anyway. Like you take
Mhm.
as many guys as you can and then you make the deals. But at the end of the day, you'd be better off keeping the younger 2 because
Mhm.
they're going to buoy you for the rest of the time. Like you look at Vegas, for example, like, yeah, they've kind of have survived mostly off of the 2 goaltenders being Marc-Andre Fleury when he was there and then Robin Lehner after him. But if
Mhm.
you look at like all the other goalies they picked during that expansion draft and during that time, it was Malcolm Subban, it was Oscar Dansk, it was Maxime Lagacé, it was I'm blanking on it was Garrett Sparks was another one,
Oh
Calvin
yeah.
Pickard. They had like they drafted
just like a rotating
well,
group of
yeah,
like fill-ins, basically.
And what's now they did also happen to go through that very weird period where every one of their goaltenders got injured, and every time the new goaltender came in, they were suddenly amazing. Like they suddenly turned into just like they all just turned into a bunch of tiny Roberto Luongos. Like, all right, shutout in the first game. Here we go. And
it's almost as if like they built around prioritizing a good defense, and so that like what was it, that kid they drafted and then he immediately debuted, like Dylan Ferguson or whatever. Like they
had to call
they called him up from the WHL, and then he came in, and I don't remember if he played or not, but
he ended up playing one period against the Oilers. Like it was like an emergency call up because so many goaltenders got hurt. They didn't even plan on playing him. But then I think that was one of the few games where the Knights did get shelled, like completely shelled. And they didn't have anything else to go with. And they were kind of like, all right, let's just give the kid a look. Might as well. Like it was already like 6-something.
They had nothing,
or something. Yeah. It was like, well, we've already won like 10 games in a row, which is already better than any other expansion team. So, hey, let's just do whatever we want at this point. Let the 19-year-old kid go out there and play against Connor McDavid, see how it goes. And I think he did fine.
Yeah, like, and see, like Vegas could do that because they were, like you said, the new franchise. They're allowed to try shit when they probably shouldn't.
When they
a team like the Vancouver Canucks, who had been toiling for 7 years, had no excuse to be forcing Michael DiPietro into a game, but they did because that's just how bad things have been managed.
I was livid about that when that happened. I was like, are you kidding me? Like
everyone saw it coming too. Like everyone that just knew as soon as he stepped in that crease, he was going to get fucking lit up. And what was it, like 7 goals or whatever the shit?
Like 8 goals. And it was like one of those things where it's like the first goal goes in off of like Ben Hutton and in.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, this poor kid. Like I just like as soon as they did that, I'm like, I swear to God, someone better be dying if they put in Mike DiPietro, because Jesus, that poor kid is not ready for this. Like it was supposed to, like, that was but guys, what cap issues? But now that being said, that was a different era. This team is true. This team is very different. This Canucks team is very different. They looked much better last night.
We're in a much different era. We've got the Canucks goalie winning Stars of the Month multiple months in a row. We've got the coaching staff winning Coaching Staff of the Month, which is apparently a thing that the NHL Coaches Association gives out every month.
And they won it
first
I've
ever heard it
a month too, which is incredible.
Yeah, they're just like, it's good enough. Round up, it's for them. Why not? And how can you disagree?
I mean, deservingly so.
Yeah, 8-0-1 record. Or sorry. I guess that's
right.
8-0
run. You're correct. Yeah, because they played only the one game, and they've only played the one game in 2022.
Right. An 88.2% PK, 31.6 power play percentage, a positive face-off win percentage. These are the stats I'm reading off of why they won Coaching Staff of the Month. But
nice.
But congrats to Bruce Boudreau, who had
there it is.
Quite the run. But my favorite thing about the Bruce Boudreau era run, where they have won these awards, the team is vibing, they're feeling good. It's so funny that like every interview with Boudreau or with Jim Rutherford, they're not even like acknowledging the fact that they're winning. Like they're just like, yeah, it's great, but we really need to win a lot if we want to even have a chance at playoffs, and our team isn't good enough. We still need. I think Jim Rutherford in his piece with Patrick Johnson was just like, we're looking at the bottom 6 because we can't have 5 points out of 6 guys in the last 3 weeks. So I'm really looking at changing that once I get a new GM in.
Yeah, I wrote about that for Canucks Army as well, like his interview with Halford and Brough, where he talked about a lot of those points as well. Like he touched on just how like the bottoms, and this was before they actually did the bottom 6 actually did really pull their weight.
Yeah,
in the game against Seattle. But like prior to that, they had not been doing a lot, and they're winning games, so it wasn't really throwing too much of a wrench into things. But clearly, if you want to take that next step into being great, your bottom 6 has to be a lot more part of the contribution, and has to be making that bigger impact. And right now, and up to that point, they weren't.
No.
and that was because kind of the previous regime had really set it up so that what they wanted, they built a top heavy team. Like they kind of purposely
Yeah.
built a top heavy team, which didn't make any sense in today's NHL, and it's why it didn't work for so long.
No, that's why everyone always criticized Travis Green's whole entire idea of having a scoring top six and a bottom six that is for,
Checking.
chewing minutes and checking and penalty killing.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. It's outdated. And it was proven this year when the team had nothing going for it. I'm sure on the notion of the bottom six playing a lot better in last Saturday or Friday's game
Saturday's game. Yep.
Saturday's game against the Seattle Kraken. Niels Hoglander has himself a game such that Kelly Hrudey and Kevin Bieksa were talking about him, although they may have missed the boat on their analysis when they said that he is an okay player. He's not that skilled. I don't know what the fuck they're watching, because
I'm sure Bieksa was a little nicer, but yeah, like Kelly Hrudey in particular.
Yeah, Bieksa was obviously trying to be nice and trying to be the neutral party here, but anyone that's watched the Canucks over the last 2 seasons knows that Niels Hoglander has been like a top 4 forward for them in the last 2 years. Like, he was the only reason they were remotely watchable last season, because he was the only one giving 100% every single game. Same as this year, except he has been incredibly snake bitten on his shots. Like, I think he still got a normal shooting percentage. Like, it's not sky high, but it's lower than it was last year. So he's just not finding the back of the net, but he's still the same kind of production pace that he was on last year. Like, he's at half a point per game or whatever it is. He's still doing really well. That's why the Rudy thing was just so what are you basing the analysis off of?
Yeah, for me, I said on Twitter that kind of screamed to me Kelly Hrudey. That might have been Kelly Rudy's way of saying I don't know who this guy is.
I have not watched him play,
and he just kind of, and it was you blindly throw the dartboard at the talking point and you hope you land on it.
You're looking for the canned answer of TV analysis, where you just you just completely make something up and you hope enough people agree that it just slides under the radar, no one notices.
Yeah. It really is that. Either you go there or you just go so outlandish and jokingly that people are like, oh, that's funny, that's a good one. You're
Kelly Hrudey was just
an MVP. You just go really
he just talked about him this guy's winning the heart, he plays big, he's got a big frame on him, and then people are like, big frame on him, and it's just okay. The clapping's kind of got some confusion behind it.
I'm holding up a cue card that says all those things on it, but it also says Leon Draisaitl on the back or something.
Or the cue card says Myers everywhere and it's just crossed out and it just says Hoglander instead. I enjoy watching Hoglander play. I thought he was really good against Seattle. I think he's been good all year, and he hasn't scored as much, but he's still one of the better players. I am concerned when I did see that Jim Rutherford quote about the bottom six not playing well. I was like, is Hoglander going to be the guy that gets flipped to improve that bottom six, or is he the only guy that sticks?
I was going to ask you that question specifically in terms of when he means the bottom six, because in a way the Canucks kind of don't really have a bottom six. Because we talked about at the beginning of the season, they're kind of more of an 8-9 kind of an 8 or 9 team kind of thing. So when he says bottom six, with the exception of obviously that includes guys like Mott, Lamico,
Dickinson, I guess.
Dickinson, unfortunately,
Highmore.
Jason, Highmore, those guys.
Yeah.
Is he including do you think he's just kind of being a little bit more vague and it kind of is just an amalgamation of a six? Or is there a specific guy, say up until recently, Tanner Pearson, for example, who had been struggling to put some points on the board? Is he talking about that? Was he talking about
it's really tough because the Canucks forwards are, like you said, are kind of structured in a way where JT Miller could one game play, or for 6 shifts out of a game, play as a third line center, and I'm using air quotes, right? And he'll play with Highmore and Mott for a couple shifts, totaling 4 minutes of ice time or whatever, and then Hoglander will play with Pettersson and Garland for 2 minutes. So are they actually going by lines here because they're switched up so often, or is he looking at the score chart of like all Canucks forwards and going, okay, these bottom 6 players, which would be the Highmores, Motts, Dickinsons, Chiasons, Lamicos, are those the guy where he's like, okay, they're not pulling their weight here, and they need to, be replaced with younger guys who contribute more on the ice? Because I guess by that metric too, like Vasily Podkolzin doesn't really cross the 17-minute mark or the 19-minute mark, but he plays enough with Pettersson or Miller in the top 6 that he would technically be a top 6 player, even though his minutes would say he's a bottom 6 player. So, I mean, for my money's worth, they do need to overhaul their bottom 6, and the building blocks there are Hoglander and Podkolzin if we were going to pigeonhole them as bottom 6 players just based on minutes.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I'm just looking at it right now. Tyler Mott has 4 points in 19 games played, and I had no idea he played 19 games played this year.
Yeah, that seems high just because he came in late. He came in late because he was injured.
Mhm.
And I mean that the points sound right for what Tyler Mott is. Like he's a
Yeah.
shutdown guy,
But
but
it's
you
shocking
can't
how
have
many
that as
games he's
yeah.
played considering.
Yeah, like and Matthew Highmore is another guy. Like he's been hurt for most
He
of the
was
year.
injured most of the year, so it's like it's
But
hard to
it's one
fault him, but realistically, this would be his production anyway if he was healthy, where he's just like not really doing anything. And that
yeah.
can be said about Lamico, that can be said about Dowling. Like Dickinson's the real surprise because I think a lot of people expected a lot more
Yeah.
based on the expectations laid on him by the previous regime, where they were like, he's going to be an elite 2-way center, chip in a lot of offense, and be a huge defensively responsible forward for us. And then he just does nothing.
Yeah.
It's such that they bump him to the wing because it's just not working at all.
Yeah. I want one thing I did want to touch on, like in terms of like the trade stuff, because like already there's been a lot of talk that like Jim Rutherford is a guy where it's like he's gonna trade your favorites. Like that's the
Yeah.
concern is yikes, he is not afraid to trade everybody except for like 2 guys. Like that was what people were hazarding a guess at with him. I would say like I feel like there's 3 untradables on this team, like officially, which would
Mhm.
be Pedersen, Hughes, Demko. Those are your 3. If those are your like official don't trades.
Yeah.
And I was asked on the radio a few days ago, like they were at like it was kind of one of those things. Faber was asking me about trades, like and stuff, and I think he was hinting more specifically at JT Miller,
Right.
and I answered as such. I have to ask the question, like, uh, if we're talking about the bottom, if we're talking about improving the bottom 6, is Miller not the guy to make? Like, if you wanted to make that kind of a trade, especially with how high his value is he not the guy to get that done? Because the way I look at it, I've said this before. Like, I don't know if this is how scorching hot a take this is, but I look at like Nils Höglander, for example, and I kind of go like, this could be a guy who is kind of a younger JT Miller. Like, you could
Yeah.
kind of see him fitting that role that JT Miller plays on this team very easily with
Mhm.
time. And I kind of look at the idea of like, well, why Miller is clearly worth more value right now. He's more, you could in theory have your his successor ready to go. And based on what Rutherford has been saying, which is that if we're going to make trades, the things that he said that he wants to get are either A, picks, and B, younger players in
Right.
particular. Those are the 2 things. So I kind of look at Höglander and Podkolzin specifically as like guys where it's like you wouldn't want to trade those guys because they're kind of part of that next fit of taking over from the older guys. So do you see that kind of situation? Is that something that we should be keeping an eye on with Miller in particular, or like
Y-
Pearson maybe as well?
Yeah, I think it'll kind of come down to the right package that would have to come back in return for JT Miller, just because he's carrying them so hard at 5v5 as their utility jack of all trades. I can play with anybody and produce type of guy. And if they trade him not now, it would almost like be like they're committing to tanking a bit.
And that'd be
And
really hard for the locker room, I think,
that's
as
a
well.
hard sell, right? Because the whole point of changing out Travis Green, changing out management was ownership telling them, like, look, we know you guys are competitive and you want to succeed and go for playoffs. So you'd have to execute the trade in a way to ensure that you don't just like completely fuck up the locker room dynamics that exist currently. Because we already saw it 2 seasons ago or whatever it was when Chris Tanev, Markstrom, Stetcher, all left, is that they lost key guys in the locker room and the team felt slighted and confused at the direction of the club. They played like shit in the following season because of it. They signed Tanner Pearson because of it. They just wanted to show the players again, like, hey, we understand locker room dynamics. We're not gonna fuck you guys up even more. And this year, it's kind of like they need to decide, like, make decisions that would probably fuck up the locker room dynamics. Like, I'm sure you've heard all the people talking about trading Bo Horvat because he's due for a contract extension soon. Brock Besser, like, he's struggled this year as well after a season where he was the team's number one forward, and he's due for an extension after this year that they can't afford. So the locker room is going to have to be imploded. And the question is it a JT Miller or is it a Horvat or is it a Besser? Which guy gets you the most and which guys don't implode your locker room? Because for all we talk about, locker room chemistry, like, one of the guys that the team would be banking on playing good again so that they could execute a trade of a key player and not really feel a hit is Elias Pettersson. So they trade away Miller, and if Pettersson still doesn't get his game together, then Bo Horvat's your number 1C again. And we've seen before when Horvat is trusted with number 1C capabilities, he cannot really do the hard matchups. He just gets killed during them, and he struggles mightily because of it. And if you're banking on Pettersson to be his like rookie or sophomore form, like, that's a big gamble for a team that has a lot riding on it heading into next year. Like, they can't afford to blow up their entire locker for the second year or second out of 4 seasons.
Yeah. They're a fragile group in the trade market for sure right now. Like, in terms of like the actual like on ice product has gotten much stronger for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I do see the biggest thing that I worry about with any sort of trade right now with like the big name guys is that locker room chemistry of like, if you're telling your players that suddenly, oh, we've traded our best player for this guy who's good, but not necessarily as good as JT Miller or whatever. Like, that's going to be very hard to tell the players, but we're also all in on playoffs and like being as good as we can. Like, that's impossible. That's really like, you can't really do both. You can't have your cake and eat it too in that sense, unless you're talking about like a season from now. And I look at the team, like, there's assets there that can get something done. I do think it's going to take something of like being a little bit bold and taking a bit of a risk here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And like with Miller, I feel bad singling out Miller, but it really is just because of the fact that his value now,
his deal rocks so hard. It's such a like you could cash in super heavy on him right now.
You could like, if your player card's right, you could get a king's ransom for JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a good trade and it would be a trade where you get exactly what you're looking for and the other team does too. Like, it's very much there. And I feel like with Miller in particular, like, it's a case of like the Canucks haven't spent necessarily like years on end building around this guy. So they'd be more willing to say part with him to try and put something else together around the guys they have spent a lot of time and assets and resources developing, like a Horvat, like a Pettersson, like a Besser. In particular, I think Besser would be trading Besser would be a bit of a mistake, just because I think he's better. Like, well, he clearly was showing up until the COVID pause put him out, that he was getting much better, and he was getting quickly back to being the Brock Besser we know, frankly, better than the Brock Besser than we know, frankly. Like, he was looking good coming out of that.
Yeah, it's all like the timing just being like completely off. Like, it's unfortunate for Besser too, because like I said, last year he was like our top forward for the Canucks, and then he starts out the gate really, really slow this year, and everyone was kind of like, I don't want to say like dismissive, but like everyone's kind of rude, like, and kind of like last year sucked. Like, last season was horrible to watch, and the only like upside was Niels Hoglander being fucking awesome, and Brock Besser doing his goddamn best to try and buoy a struggling Elias Pettersson and a struggling forward group, and he was fucking on fire. And then it sucks that like only a few games this season like all of a sudden just reset everybody's brains to be like, Brock Besser sucks, get rid of him, he's overpaid. And it's like, no.
Pedersen, same thing. Like, gee,
Pedersen too, like
okay, we should address this. No trading Elias Pettersson. You'd be very
please don't do
you'd be
that.
like, okay, let's even like I get the whole like, you know, oh, Wayne Gretzky got traded, anybody can get traded. Let's
Certainly.
say that, like, yeah, that's true. That's totally true. But let's put it this way. You don't trade if you're gonna trade. If you were to trade Elias Pettersson, you don't trade him when he's at his absolute worst value of all time. That is the worst possible thing you could do.
Yeah.
If you decide you're not a fan of him when he's putting up his best points, and that's you decide that that's what needs to happen, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I am not with it on the whole. The Canucks are have won like 8 of 9 and have 9 points in 9 games in a row. And all these people are like, time to trade Pettersson. He sucks. It's like, are you stupid? No.
Like, you do understand why it's bad to trade when a player's value is at its lowest. Like,
yeah.
In theory, like if like I'm here to hear all your perspective, trade Elias Pettersson for X package. That's fine, but you do it when he's playing good and his value is through the roof. You don't do it when everyone's like, oh, he might not bounce back, so therefore I'm just going to give you a high second round pick. That's it.
Yeah, no.
Like, you're never going to do that.
You wait until he's back to being worth a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl package. You got to wait for when he's back to being as good enough to trade just him for those 2 players, because he is that good.
and honestly, like at this point too, like say Jim Rutherford actually legitimately was like, yeah, I'm trading Pettersson for, you know, a number 1 right shot defenseman or whatever. The unfortunate thing would be like if Pettersson really was ever on the table, the best thing they could have done would be trying to flip him for Jack Eichel when they had the chance. Like they should have been doing that. If they really did, if there was ever any inkling for them to be like, we wanted to trade Pettersson for the best value we can get, they should have been in on Jack Eichel.
And even that might have been a hard sell, considering that the Sabres got, you know, Alex Tuch, who's obviously is not as good a player as Elias Pettersson, but then they also got on top of that Peyton Krebs. By the way, those 2 actually just put together, I think both got their first points for the Sabres on the same goal.
With a very, very nasty tic-tac-toe play, which was
gorgeous.
Pretty unreal. You gotta love that. You gotta love poetry.
Yeah, you gotta love that. Yeah, I think what I said as well on the radio when we were talking about this was very adamantly, the best thing right now the Canucks could frankly do is not trade anybody, in a sense, because in a way it's almost like, and I think Jim Rutherford knows that better than anybody, because when he's been talking about the team, like he's like, I'm not sold on anything. I don't have a hard stance on what this team is yet because of COVID, because of how uncharacteristically hot they've been of late. Like you can't really judge what a team's flaws is and what makes them, like everything about what makes them good and bad based on a team that's playing like on an insanely unsustainable clip. Like we've said before, it's hard for even President's Trophy winning teams to get 9-10 wins in a row. Like that's a very hard bar to clear.
I'm not gonna say they're lucky, because obviously they are playing infinitely better than they were all season.
They're clearly winning a lot of games on merit of being the better team.
Yeah, but there's obviously like the start of the season too, they were horribly unlucky. Like Pettersson hit more posts than like double the amount of posts as the last guy or the second guy on the list. Like they were really unlucky to start, and now like Thatcher Demko's really good, but they are fundamentally very lucky to be getting like a 960 save percentage every single game out of their goaltender in his first year as the starter, or second year, sorry, as the starter.
Like, speak for yourself. I saw that coming. No.
But you know what I mean? Like he is very good, and like sure, like a number 1 starter, like if you're getting 920 save percentage, I don't know if they're winning 8 out of 10 or whatever, right? Or sorry, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, so the Kraken are an example of that, like we mentioned earlier. Like you can lose a lot of games just based on your goaltending not being as good as it can be. Heck, a lot of times, like actually one of the running jokes of the NHL is that the Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year often just goes to the team that had the streakiest goaltender. Like that seems to be the common thread among a lot of those teams.
Yeah, and it also comes down to as well, like the Jack Adams is like, okay, how many players on that team carried guys entering contract years, right? Or like at the end of their
You
contract looking for pay raises. Because speaking of Seattle, Chris Driedger had been like an AHL tweener his entire career, and then he finally gets on a heater in Florida, coincidentally at the end of a league minimum contract, and he
hey,
earns himself a $3 million pay raise for his
props to
next
him.
team, and he sucks for them. And so like you have to wait a lot of that. That's why I fucking love listening to James Rutherford's hits with radio or for media or whatever he's doing, because he's just like not buying any of it. He is fully aware of all of these different situations where he's like, yeah, we're playing good, a little lucky, but I'm not ready to judge. I'm itchy. I think he said he was like itching to like start making moves because he doesn't like his top bottom six like at all. So I like that he is being patient with his decision making, but like recognizing and trying to be as upfront as possible with like the fan base to not buy into it. Like it's weird. Whereas
Not to
like
like not to overanalyze what you're seeing. Like, and that's
yeah,
what's
like
important.
the
Like
the last regime, like if they went on a 3-game win streak, you'd be hearing Jim Benning or whoever going on radio and being like, yeah, everything's on the table. We're looking at ways to improve our team for the playoffs right now.
we're looking at trading all our
Yeah,
entire Abbotsford farm team for let's see who
who's
would be on the
available?
market for in the free agency market this year. Who's the Tyler Toffoli this year?
Oh
That
man,
is actually a
is it
that is
Tyler
actually
Toffoli?
Is it Tyler? No, because he's got 3 more years left on his Canadians deal. Which
This is true.
actually, well, to be fair, the Canadians are in a spot where they might be
Just
considering
complete selling.
yeah, like actually, you know what? Here, maybe this is a question we can ask right now. If the Canucks were going to Montreal to try and find somebody who you feel like would be a fit for next year rather than say this year, and you're not buying into the playoffs, are you looking at say like a guy like the one that I'm looking at is say somebody like a Josh Anderson per se? Like, do you look at something like that? Can you
It
get that done?
I mean, it honestly, I wish they had picked up Cale Clegg off of waivers when he
That would
left
have
the
been a
Kings
very
organization, because he's on a cheap deal and he's like actually like a pretty legit like defenseman. He just was waiver eligible and they lost him.
that is
But like,
where they should be looking more than forwards. Yeah, defense,
yeah,
correct.
but like the Habs are in the same situation as this regime, where like they're not tied to any of the deals that were just signed by Bergevin in the last like 2 seasons. Like they're not really beholden to keeping Christian Dvorak. They're not kept to Tyler Toffoli either. If they really wanted to try and trade him, they could.
Hell,
Same thing with like Edmondson or Ben Sherratt. Like Ben Sherratt's probably like their keep trade deadline piece that they're going to flip, just because like, he's a big body. It's not too old. Deal's kind of manageable. And like, he still plays pretty decently most of the
yeah.
time. And their young core, kind of like the Canucks situation, right? Like they're not going to trade Romanoff. They're not going to trade Caulfield. They're not going to trade
Nick Suzuki, who
Nick
they just gave a
Suzuki. They
big
just signed.
contract to.
Yeah. So like
You could argue they're in a better spot because if you look at their team, it's like a lot of guys are on IR right now. Like LTR, they are very injured right now because
Yeah, they
Anderson,
are.
Dvorak, Toffoli, Edmondson, Armia, and Perot are all injured. And that's
Yeah.
not including the LTIR that they're taking up with Paul Byron and Shea Weber, and also not including Carey Price, who's
Yeah.
on leave with the NHLPA player assistants right now. So he's not included. But the majority of their team is made up by guys who are in that 6-figure, like on their entry level contract deals. Like I'm looking at some of these names and some of these are guys I've never heard of. Like, who is Brandon Baddock? I have no idea who that is.
That sounds like
Raphael Harvey Pinard.
I know that
Okay.
guy.
Like
Brandon Baddock
you
sounds
will
like a
know more
Mortal
of these
Kombat
guys.
character.
You would know more of these guys because they're
Yeah,
Laval
I've
Rockets,
seen
'cause you
them
saw
sort
last
of.
year. So, obviously Ryan Paling, that's a well-known one. Alex Belzil,
Yeah,
Belzil,
Belzile, yeah, he's been around for a
Louis
while.
Belpedio.
Belpedio.
Belpedio, like they've
Yeah.
got like their team is
It's
mostly
basically
made
the
up of
Laval
young
Rocket
guys.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And then they've got obviously your big names like your Nick Suzuki's and your Cole Caulfields, right? And then Jonathan Drouin, Brendan Gallagher. There's they're in a better spot in a way because their cap is not as partially due to unfortunate circumstances with particularly with Price and Weber, which were taking up a large portion of their cap. They're in a spot right now where they can where they have a lot more wiggle room to like get out from bad contracts and kind of find a way to fix some of these things. And even if they can't, like, it's not going to kill them if they're still here, kind of thing. Whereas the Canucks are in a spot where they have to lose some money to bring some in again. Yeah. And that's going to involve trying to find big money deals to kind of like push out that you can to like open up space. And yeah, with the Canucks, like, I do like that they're taking their time on it. I do think that they should be looking at the trade deadline coming up as a good time, as the advantage, because like I've said before, the reason why you make the deal, you make the management change sooner rather than later, is because that trade deadline does play a huge element into what you do next year. What's nice about it is that by the time that trade deadline comes around, it's a lot easier to sell your own players on, say, making a deal that might sting a little bit in that short term, because it's a case of like, well, if we know already what we are at this point, nothing can fix that, and nothing can fix that train kind of thinking kind of thing.
Right.
You don't have to worry so much, because then you can start being like, look, this year, the end of this year is going to be a little tough, but next year we are going to be way, way better for it. Yeah. And that's when you start looking into that. But that being said, I mean, the Canucks don't play again until Saturday, and even that is potentially not going to happen either, because Ottawa's game against the Kraken today got postponed because of COVID issues with the Senators. Canucks already have a game against the Islanders that is no longer on the table. And the Canucks, and now that game on Saturday is in jeopardy too. The Canucks are looking at a situation right now where they potentially won't play again until January the 11th, in Florida against the Panthers. I believe the league leading Florida Panthers, unless I'm very much mistaken. Overall, like, there is a timeline here. Sorry, they're fourth. My bad. They're 2 points behind the lead. Do you know who the current number one team in the NHL is right now?
I'm gonna guess it's Carolina.
You're very close. They're second. They're tied for second. The actual answer, believe it or not, is the Washington Capitals. That came out of
naturally.
Like, they are one of those teams where, like, they could finish anywhere between first place and 20th, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, they're a perennial playoff team. Any team without Ovechkin, right? Like,
yeah, like, they're just. I almost want to think like they're overperforming just for the sake of Alex Ovechkin's now in the Gretzky hunt. Like that team isn't even like, they're not even really looking for like
they're not trying to win
ambitions.
a cup. They're just trying
they don't really
to get
care.
him the record,
They're
yeah.
just trying to get him to beat Gretzky. They could care completely elsewise about playoffs. Like, they'll probably wouldn't even try in playoffs because they're like, we need him rested for the regular season.
That would be, you know how incredibly funny it'd be if the Capitals literally went on like they did what the Lightning did, where they win the President's Trophy, immediately get swept out, but instead of like it being like they embarrassingly lost, like you
they celebrate,
you watch or they like purposely like sit all their best players and play like an only AHL guy. They're like, we gotta rest them up for the regular season. They're gonna put up like 300. Alex Ovechkin's gonna put up 300 points next year. We need to have him rested and ready to go for that run.
Ovechkin has 50 points in 34 games as like a 37-year-old man.
He's gonna catch him. Like, that's our most fun fact. That's actually, for anyone who is not subscribed to the CreaseCast YouTube channel, you should. Our number one most watched video of all time is our highlight clip of us talking about whether or not he could catch Wayne Gretzky. And you were at the time,
I was very
you were a little
hesitant.
bit more bullish. I think you've changed.
I've changed because
that.
I mean, I always expected him, like, probably at his age. I was like, okay, he's probably going to be like an 18 to 23 goal scorer for the next like 4 years, and it'll trail off just because of age, right? Like, it's going to happen. He's kind of slowed down a bit, like in playoffs too. Like, it's just like the way it's been. And then he pulls out. He's already got 24 goals in 34 games. He's almost at a goal per game pace. Like, what? He's had
multiple hat tricks. Like, the guy, like, he's
a freak. He's a complete freak.
He is literally, he is Jaromir Jagr if Jaromir Jagr was also like built like an absolute truck. Like the
basically.
guy, like Ovechkin is incredible. Like you and like we talked about this when we talked about it the last time we had this kind of little conversation. Was like for a guy who plays as physical as Alex Ovechkin does, he's weirdly incredibly durable. Like he has
Yes.
not missed a lot of games in his career.
And there's been a ton of games this year too where, like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but like the people covering the games will be like, Ovechkin took a big hit. He was holding his knee really awkwardly and skated off the ice. And then you hear nothing about it, and it's just like, yeah, Ovechkin's in the starting lineup. He'll be playing the game, no problems. And it's just like,
Yeah.
what's he doing? Why
Like,
are his knees like
what should be like he's just
impossible to break?
I just eat my leafy greens. Like that's all it is. Like he's just like, I just eat salad. Like that
Well,
really could be it with him.
it could be
Yeah.
it could be a dad strength thing, because like we're seeing a ton of videos of him with like baby Ovechkin like practicing like
Oh,
hockey and stuff.
those are
So
very
maybe
cute.
it's just like dad strength stuff where he's just like, oh man, I gotta pay for this kid for the next like 20 years. I really gotta start playing better so I can try and keep getting these 1-year deals with Washington so I can break Ovechkin's record. Like
Yeah.
he's
You know
got bills to pay.
Yeah, you know what's incredible as well is the fact that he actually like he only has 11 power play points.
Yeah,
Like
he's
out of
fucking
50, that's
ridiculous.
like yeah, it's not like he's getting it's
Yeah.
not these are not like calorie goal like just like empty calorie goals. Like
Mhm.
he is routinely getting even strength goals and
Yeah.
he is incredible. Like I honestly like I don't think I've never been to a Capitals game. You and I might have to make a trip to see the Capitals play in Vancouver the next time they're here because frankly, like, I don't know if we're ever gonna see a player like him again.
No.
He's incredible. Like I've been pretty fortunate in my life to see a lot of guys play. I have
Mhm.
not yet to see Ovechkin play live. I feel like I kind of need to go see that at some point because it's unlike anything else.
Yeah, it's like that's why everyone was so upset when Pittsburgh Penguins like came into town and Sid didn't play that one year. You remember
Yeah,
that? Was that
there
this year? Or was that the year before
no,
last year?
he scored. I think he scored the last goal of the Travis Green Jim Benning era. I think it was Crosby, was it not,
Oh.
or the game winner or something? Thank you,
Ba-ba.
Sidney Crosby. That's right, because you know what? Everyone was joking that it was Sidney Crosby's second most important goal in Vancouver at Rogers Arena after the golden goal.
Fuck.
Like that was a good one. Yeah, but yeah, there have been a couple times actually. Crosby and Ovechkin, two famously very actually that is the interesting thing. Ovechkin has scored less points against the Canucks than any other team in the NHL, believe it or not.
Interesting.
So it's particularly that's because famously the goaltender Ovechkin could not beat no matter what he did was Luongo. He
Yeah.
had a very hard time scoring on Luongo. There's a whole like sound bite of him on the bench being like, "Oh, Luongo, I hate that guy." Like because he could never score on Luongo. Luongo had his number for years. It was so funny. And kind of similar with Crosby too. I don't think he had much success against Lou either at the time. I remember he had
Yeah.
that one incredible penalty
It
shot save on Crosby, like the first time Crosby came to Vancouver. Like
yeah.
that was, yeah.
It's kind of like the Marc-Andre Fleury thing against the Canucks. Like he's just like has wins dating back to like 2004. Like they just cannot beat
John
Marc-Andre
Gibson,
Fleury.
yeah. There's you have everyone has that building or like that
Yeah.
guy that they can't beat. On the polar opposite side of things. So originally this started as us talking about like the week the Canucks have off here.
Mhm.
There are other teams playing, obviously. Right now, the only game on the schedule right now is Edmonton and the Rangers playing at Madison Square Garden. It is currently 2-0 for the Rangers midway through the game. The
Good
Oilers,
news.
are currently in their last 10 are 2-6-2. They have lost
We
2 in a
love
row in
to hear it.
overtime, including the second game or I forget it was the second game or the game against the Devils. They blew it in the late stages of the game, and then Mike Smith let in an absolute wobbler
Oh,
from
that one
Jake
was
Hughes
so
or
bad.
Jack Hughes. Yeah,
Jack Hughes.
Jack Hughes. It was an absolute knuckle puck that he should have had. But that's life when I don't understand the
You-
Oilers for the life of me. Like,
Okay, so
they
you know what's
had,
really
they had
funny?
time to go get another goaltender.
Yeah, speaking of Seattle and goaltending, same with the Oilers. They didn't have to re-sign Mike Smith. Um, really funny was that on Twitter it showed, like, I was scrolling through because I was watching a movie and it was like Mike Smith is back, baby, and I was like, oh, I guess he made like a really good save,
Oh no.
and it was him bobbling the puck and losing the game, and I was like, oh, I get it, it's
Yeah,
facetious, and then I was like,
yeah.
okay, it all makes sense.
Yes. Like,
Because in my head
I
I was
am
like,
part of the joke.
oh, Mike Smith has just always been Mike Smith to me. Like, he's always just like completely inconsistent and like rarely is actually good. So like it would make sense that like he's back to being like good back when he was like with Phoenix like
Yeah, he was like,
decades ago.
you know what he is like, because there's like the whole running joke with JT Miller in particular, where he will be like the most elite of the elite for like 8 shifts, and then he'll have one shift where he'll just have this
Just
terrible
not
like
even
giveaway,
trying.
like
Yeah.
this absolute worst, like awful giveaway. Like, in a way, that's been Mike Smith's career, where he's like, he'll
Yeah.
go through these weird stretches where he is absolutely unbeatable for everybody, and then he'll go through this where he'll just let in like a couple of softies and
Uh,
like in quick succession and lose games single-handedly. Like,
yeah,
I've
that's
never seen
the
anything like it from a goaltender who plays as much as he does.
I think the only equivalent I would say is Pekka Rinne, because Pekka Rinne would have a
Mm,
season where he would be unbelievable and then choke in the playoffs, and then the next season he would be okay in this regular season, then be lights out in the playoffs, and that would be his entire career as a Pred, just completely flip flopping whether he was the reason they were doing well or the reason they were terrible, and it was
yeah,
just like on and on and on until he finally retired
yeah,
last season.
yeah. And at least in Pekka Rinne's case, he could make the argument that he at least helped like revitalize the Predators franchise entirely. Like, he has the
Yeah,
whole I saved this franchise like from near bankruptcy at one point for being as good as I was in the early
yeah,
parts of my career. And now he's getting his jersey retired, I believe, this year. Like
yeah.
like I don't Mike Smith, I don't think's getting that from the Oilers. Like,
Nope.
we touched on this, I think, briefly on the last full show we did, where we talked about kind of like the body language with the Oilers and how they're kind of a team that famously, when the going gets tough, they kind of fold in,
They
like,
implode a bit. Yeah,
because that's all they've known for as long as the Oilers have been around.
yeah,
And like, I don't know. Again, I'm not ready to like write off an Oilers team ever, really, because as long as they have McDavid and Draisaitl playing at full health, like, there's nothing, you can never fully say, oh, they're cooked entirely. Like, the season's over for them, because for all we know, those two could go out of their way and magically put up 400 points over like 40 games.
yeah,
And suddenly the Oilers have number one in the NHL sewn up just because of those two.
yeah,
But with Edmonton right now, I look at the Oilers as clearly the most vulnerable team that the Canucks could leapfrog into a playoff conversation. Like, I don't think LA is necessarily going to I think LA provides a little bit more of a formidable option there, just because of what their design is and how they're not nearly as top heavy. There's still a
yeah.
little bit of a flight risk because Jonathan Quick is old now, and they don't have like the horses necessarily to keep up like they used to.
Mm.
Anaheim is definitely going to fall down to earth at some point. I would say eventually, I think Anaheim slipping out of contention is your best bet out
Yeah,
of the
like,
4 that are there.
like, are they really the second best team in the Pacific Division?
No,
Like, I
no,
find that hard to believe. So
hard no.
I could definitely see them slipping, Edmonton slipping, just because, like, what are they? They are, once again, they are a team reliant entirely on McDavid and Draisaitl outscoring their way to victory, and it's
Which
never
is
going to
not what
work.
it looked like at the beginning of the year, because they had Zach Hyman, who was doing really, really well, Kaylor
Yeah,
Yamamoto, like the Nugent Hopkins. And I remember writing about their pet PK, where they had like some of their guys who were playing in their top 6. Like, they had them playing PK minutes, and suddenly the Oilers had a weirdly good penalty kill, and like were
hmm
like top 5 in the NHL. And now you're looking at them and it's kind of just like I don't think they're particularly injured right now. I think they're relatively healthy as far as most teams go. Let's see here. Like, just taking a look. Okay, so they're missing, well, No, they're not missing really much difference. Like Chris Russell probably hurts a bit, like on your defensive side of things. But other than that, like Oscar Clefbaum, who's been injured for a while.
Yeah, he is.
Al-
I think he was out. He's on the season opening injured reserve. Like he's
yeah,
not even shown
he
up.
hasn't played. I don't think he's played in the last
2-3
three
years, maybe.
seasons. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a very long time. I remember when Oscar Clefbaum was like considered like the best potential like trade bait
yeah.
defenseman in the league because of how undervalued he was at the
Mhm.
time. And then like the last guy who's injured is Alex Stalock. Like, and he's third string goaltender. Like that's
Yeah.
not really anything. They're a team that's mostly got everything they could
Mhm.
want in their group right now. And I don't really know what to do with them. Like I think it's one of those things where you have to hope they've built enough of a foundation to ride it out and to find a way that they can like claw back into hey, we're not just two guys. We're not just
Yeah,
a two guy
we're
team.
more than that.
We are more than that.
We are at least 3 to 4.
Like there has been talk about the idea of like Dave Tippett might be on thin ice there. Do you see that
And
as a potential here, especially tonight
I
with like
I could
them being the
definitely
one?
see them making a change after tonight and being like, Travis Green's available. We're gonna go for him now
Oh my god.
because if there's a coach that understands how to get a lot out of his young players, it's Travis Green. And we've got a lot of young guys conceivably coming up the pipeline that we need to get better results out of. So I guess I could see them trying that.
That'd be
Maybe it'd be
fascinating.
very funny, like especially
I
like
think
just the division rival thing. Like that would be so funny.
yeah. Knowing Ken Holland, I feel like he's probably gonna go for like a Claude Julien. Like
Or
that kind
or
of a
or he's gonna go to his
oh
buddy from
uh,
Detroit,
I was about
Mister
to say I
One,
forgot
Mister
about that.
Mike Babcock.
Oh god. I
Unfortunately,
mean, hey, look, if he wants to bring in Mike Babcock, go ahead. Like, hey, if
yeah.
a division rival wants to bring in this very problematic coach, that's as a Canucks fan, that sounds like a great idea. Go for it. No,
Well, a
it's
part of me
not a good.
wonders, like when we got rumors at one point that the Canucks had reached out about hiring, uh, not Bill
Was it Babcock?
Peters.
Because that was out there.
No, sorry, it was Dale Talon, and
Yeah.
the league stepped in and said, "Yeah, you're not allowed to hire Dale Talon. Like, it's just not a good look. It's not the right time. Like, you're just not going to do it."
Which good on the league.
Good on the league. Embarrassing that they needed to step in and say, like,
Potentially, yeah.
"Hey, optically, this is a horrible look. Don't do this." So I wonder if they would have that kind of sense to do the same for Mike Babcock. But that by that same
That's interesting.
token, Mike Babcock, for whatever reason, even though he should probably never coach an NHL game again, he has this like allure to old hockey men and old hockey media that love to prop him up like he's some kind
Yeah.
of saint. Case in point, that Pierre LeBrun like rehab article where Mike Babcock basically didn't apologize and just said like, "I am who I am. Deal with it."
And apparently also talks almost like he's Elmo, where he's like,
Yeah.
Mike Babcock is a good guy. Mike Babcock knows what's up.
Mike
Like
Babcock would love to return to play for Mike Babcock hockey.
yeah,
What?
like exactly. Like there was once what was a really good article. There was an article written while he was still coach of the Leafs. I think it was by Sean Fitzgerald, I think was of The Athletic, I think wrote it, talking
Mhm.
about what is Mike Babcock's accent because they couldn't figure it out because it's not a natural Saskatchewan accent by any stretch. It's like some other weird
It's
thing.
some weird
'Cause- yeah,
amalgamation or like
yeah.
he talks like he's gritting through his teeth because like he's in tremendous back pain or something at all the time.
Good player.
So
He's
he
got a good
talks
player.
like this the whole
Yeah.
time because he's in
You
so
know,
much agony.
Yeah. Yeah. And the like the other thing is like with the comparison of Talon in there.
Mhm.
Like the other thing is like with Dale Talon, there wasn't really like it's not like with Dale Talon, people are always hearing about, oh, he wants a job again. Like he's you're not hearing that with him. It's very
No.
quiet on that front of like, oh, like of people in Dale Talon's corner trying to get him back into NHL jobs again, clearly. So clearly there's kind of it seems in a way like there's where there's smoke, there's fire kind of situation in that regard.
Right.
Whereas with Babcock, there seems to be this constant stream of people ready to
They're just
stick
angling.
their neck out for him,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And I
Yeah.
don't know why that's the guy that people want to hang their hat on. Does it just have to do with the fact that he won Olympic gold medals? Does it just have to do with the one cup he won with the Red Wings? But like, I don't know.
It is
But
very
I think it
bizarre
hurt.
because it's very bizarre because like a lot of media guys do have like favorites and they have relationships with coaches because they're good with them or provide good answers, and it's like all you ever
Babcock was
knew
none of those
all
things.
you ever
Yeah.
knew about from his time in Toronto was how much of an asshole he was to media and how like staunchly against answering questions he was. So it's like what would a hockey media person get out of like vouching for Babcock's character to come back in the league? Like you get
Yeah.
nothing out of it.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing that this is particularly the coach where people are gonna hang their hat on trying to
Yeah.
like really try and get back in. I think there are much better options. Like it's not even just like putting aside all the problematic stuff about him. I just think even on just like a pure hockey standpoint, there's got to be better options out there available for you, like in the AHL ranks
I
or
think yeah, like
who's
to your
already an
point.
assistant coach on an NHL bench right now.
Yeah, like to your point, like I don't even think he was that good in Toronto with the guys that he had. And I think he proved that
Oh
he
God, no.
was out of date and didn't understand the game as it was progressing. Like in that final playoff series when he had benched Austin Matthews in like the final 2 minutes of the game. It
Yeah,
made no
he
sense. It proved
he
he didn't
barely played.
understand. Yeah, like he didn't play the last like 2 minutes nursing a 1 goal deficit and it was like do or die. And so
Yeah,
instead he put out like
he
he
was
put out
rolling 4 lines through game 7. Like, it's like,
yeah,
why
it's
would you ever
ridiculous.
do that? You don't have a you have not only Matthews, but you have Nylander, you have
Yeah.
Marner, you are clearly a team with a clear top 6, a good bottom 6 for that matter, but a
Mhm.
clear top 6. You should be absolutely double shifting those guys in the final minutes against Boston when you're down by a goal. But
Yeah.
nope, he just kept going, what? Line 1, line 2,
Yeah.
like you can't roll lines in that point. You have to
And
switch things up. And
and
he
then
didn't. He wasn't
and
ready.
then
He's not good anymore.
the same people that were vouching for him to come back and get an NHL job didn't have the stones to ask him why he wasn't playing his star players in the final minutes. They were too scared to. So it's like I don't know why you would want him back. I'm good. I want Travis Green in Edmonton for the memes and the lulls. I want to see like just the first like the Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers still haven't even played a game against each other this season, have they?
No, they played one. They have played
Like
2.
at the
They played
start
2.
of the year, or whatever,
The
maybe.
first game they played the first game of the season against each other, and then one game, I think, in the first homestand. It was like a
Okay.
2-0 loss on like Hockey Night in Canada. It wasn't a good game.
Okay. Yeah.
It was
So
right when the team was just coming back off of the bad first road trip. So yeah, they played
yes.
2. They just were
So
very uneventful.
so they play again on the 25th against the Oilers. So
Oh wow.
imagine after this break, they like say they lose tonight against the Rangers, which it's kind of tracking to be. They fire Dave Tippett and they hire Travis Green. That means we get 2 weeks of build up or 3 weeks of build up to a potential Boudreaux Green rematch, the rivalry to end all rivalries. Like that'd be great. Give me the spice. Give me
Yeah.
some spice to like close out the year heading to the trade deadline. You
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the spice at that point is going to be the Canucks are now in front of the Oilers in points. Can they build the lead? Because again, like, yeah, you got this week and okay. The Ducks are the other one, right? Like the Ducks are currently, if we're looking strictly at points percentage, which in a way is what everyone should be looking at right now, rather than what the points on the board say, because
Mhm.
everyone has played such a wavering difference of games that it
Yeah.
really does come down to who has played the most and who's played the least and what in that time frame. The Ducks in particular, they have 41 points right now. The Canucks only have 35. So there's a gap there. There's a clear 6-point gap, but they've played 35 games. So they've played one more game than the Canucks. So there is a situation in there where you see where if the Ducks keep kind of ticking back downwards into trending back into more what they're supposed to be, there is a window in there where you look at it like, okay, that's your team. That's your team that you have to jump over to get into the playoffs. And that's why winning games against the Ducks like they have in
Yeah.
recent days really is going to be key. I think you're
Yeah.
looking at them as your best hope of leapfrogging into the playoffs. The Oilers might have the bottom fall out from underneath them entirely. But again, with when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl as like two of the best players in the entire sport,
Yeah.
like you're that's banking on a lot still
Mhm.
in a way. I think you got to look at like Anaheim as like the clear as the clear weak link there that you could maybe get in past, and that means continuing to win games against your division rivals. That means winning games against teams like Vegas. That means winning teams against Calgary. I think who they haven't played this year. I don't
think they have
I
yet
think
either.
I think this has been one of the weird ones where the Canucks have yet to play Calgary once all season.
Yeah, their
And
first
we're
game against
round
them is the 29th of January right now.
Yeah, and then they'll play them probably, I believe, like maybe like 3-4 times in the final couple months of the season, in the final like 4 months of the season. So like,
Correct.
that's going to be your ticket in. The Sharks, obviously, you have a game postponed against them at some point. That's going to factor in. The Ducks are also a postponed game. You're going to factor that in as well. Like there are most of the games that the Canucks have currently on the postponed calendar are team against Pacific Division rivals. And that's going to be those are those big swing games that can make the hugest difference into whether you get into that wild card or not. So let's see what they can do with that, like as they get into that point.
Yeah. Keep beating the Seattle Kraken. They got one more match against them like at the end of the year. Just keep doing that.
Oh, that's going to come in handy. Like that will, like if you sweep that season series, like that could be make a massive difference into like that final point or two, because the Kraken are bound to beat somebody. So like
just don't let it be you.
Just don't let it be you. Bingo.
Yeah.
Don't let it be you.
I guess since we kind of roundabout talked about the Seattle Kraken, we'll quickly shout out Nadia Popovici.
Yes, this is the Infinity Gauntlet. Here we go.
This is the Infinity Gauntlet winner to the helpful medical student who spotted a cancerous mole on the back of the Canucks equipment manager, Red Hamilton, on the back of his neck. Did like, I don't know, she like went on her phone and typed up a big message in bright colored letters saying, your mole is cancerous, get it checked out. And
which is like
I mean, pretty insane that you would A, spot it, and then B, manage to get that person's attention and see it actually turning out to be a cancerous mole as well, and help saving this guy's life. And I mean, we don't have time to get into like how the donations made by the Kraken and the Vancouver Canucks are like nothing relative to the cost of being a medical student. But kudos to both franchises for contributing $10,000 towards her tuition. That'll at least cover her for maybe one semester.
It goes a long way. Like, I don't know what her scholarship story is or anything like that. But it's not nothing. Like, it's absolutely not nothing. Like, it's like I'm never one to like, shame in those particular cases, like of like just doing like the right thing and like, giving money to somebody who literally, going to medical school is clearly out to make a good difference in the world for what they do. Like she's 22 and
she's already made a difference in one.
Yeah, she's already saved a life. Yeah, she's already saved a life before she's even set foot in a medical in her medical program. That's incredible. And that's the kind of good people that you want to like reward with and you want to see go and succeed in life and give them every opportunity to get there. So yeah, kudos to her. Like that was very wonderful. That was a very touching
that was a story I was not expecting to wake up and read on the game day or whatever. They found her quick, like on Facebook, that was the big thing. Places too, which was great. It was like perfect timing because it was like the story had come out the morning of their game against Seattle, and it was like bing bang boom, found the lady's mom, found the girl, wrote the checks, did the video with the woman meeting Red Hamilton before the game, had the tribute video thing for the actual in-game event so that they could shout it out to the crowd. So kudos to them, and nice to have some like actually like completely unrelated to hockey type stories happening in hockey. Like that's
something's bigger than hockey.
So like that's a good change of pace.
I really like the video. Can I just say, like, not to like, shout, but like kind of shout out to like whoever made like the social team or whatever on that video. I like that they didn't, like, when I watched it, I was kind of expecting more of like a very like like a very like edited video, like a very edited down like video of like, oh, just like with like some jangly music behind it kind of thing, because that's usually what is done in like those kinds of cases. I really liked watching that video in terms of like it was just the raw conversation of them meeting and everything and
Yeah.
talking about it. Like they didn't clip, they didn't cut anything, they didn't clip, they didn't change anything about it. They literally just put it up as it was, and it was a
Yeah.
very, I think that in itself was a very, made it a very good, a very real video, and I liked that and I appreciated that from the social team for doing it that way. Like I
Yeah,
think that was
it
a
didn't
really good way
yeah,
to
it
do
didn't
it.
feel like scripted or like anything.
No,
It just felt like a natural conversation between two people who like, well, obviously one very appreciative of what the lady did. So,
yeah,
kudos to her.
good on
Um,
that.
Other than that, Winter Classic, did you happen to watch any of it? I
I
watched a bit
did.
of it and I got too cold, so I turned it off.
You got too cold from watching in your
I got I
home.
got I got a contact cold, so I stopped watching it.
Nice. I watched it. I gotta say, like, I'll say this. You know what? Like, they've been doing the Winter Classics now since 2008, and like, and then there was of course the original like Heritage Classic, that one off between the Oilers and Canadians in like '03.
Mm.
And like they've been doing outdoor games for so long, and I gotta say, like, even this long into the process, I'm still like a total sucker for those games. Like I still find them really fun.
They're
Like
really entertaining
yeah.
when it's not Chicago, which is
Yeah,
a
when
big
it's
ask.
not Chicago. Chicago's due. They haven't played in like 5 years. Like, yeah, it's time to bring them back.
They're
No,
gonna get 7 in a year now.
they're gonna get 7. Like they'll just play their whole season at the whatever the Chicago Bears
Yeah,
stadium
yeah.
is. Um, I posed the question on Twitter about a Winter Classic between the Canucks and the Kraken, because I think like a lot of people naturally think that's the natural next step here, is that
Mhm.
you're gonna get a Winter Classic between the Canucks and the Kraken
The
in
Kraken, yeah.
Seattle in particular. So, and the question being like, would you rather have the game at Lumen Field, which is where the Seahawks play, or and the Sounders as well, or T-Mobile Park where the Mariners play? I don't know about you, but personally, I am a bigger proponent of T-Mobile,
Of the baseball field?
of the baseball field. Yes, because I often like whenever I look at like the atmosphere of those games, I think that really plays into it. And
Sure.
I feel like the problem with like putting it in the football field, while it might have like the better sight lines,
Mhm.
is that it kind of loses like like the actual like character of the game a little bit. It's more just about,
Sure.
oh, big stadium with a lot of people. Like whereas like I think with like whenever they're on the baseball, like the ballpark diamond,
Yeah.
they do a lot more like scene setting kind of thing around it, and like the atmosphere in itself is a lot more entertaining. And I think it sets up like they had the thing in this game where like out in the outfield they had the players walking out of like a log cabin like to the rink. And then they had like
Yeah, it
one of the things
was
I read is they had like taken Christmas trees that had been recycled
aw.
to put in the areas around it, the part around the park, to like kind of like make some like barriers and like that they needed to like for like sight lines and views and stuff like that. And then they had like 6 rinks of like people playing shinny
Yeah.
around the original, and it was like, oh, this is rink 1, and then the other rinks, so it was
Yeah.
like, and it was yeah, and it was a very cute setup that they had there, and I thought that was like awesome. And you can't do that as well in the football stadiums, because there's not
Yeah,
as much
fair.
space.
It's
I
a
don't
bit
know about
tighter,
you.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I like the idea of like just like the sight lines, and obviously I think there's a lot more like recency bias. Like there's more success with the Seattle Seahawks franchise, so it would make more
Yes.
sense to put it in an arena where there's like been success, whereas instead of like throwing it in Mariners Field, like almost feels like a bad omen, because it's just like they've been so bad for so long in such an irrelevant franchise that
They're
you would want to
the
put it
the
where there
Canucks of
was a
the MLB.
championship. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like the same thing. Like if you couldn't host it in Vancouver because it's like the last time they had a winter classic or whatever went about as badly as any winter classic could go for a franchise. So it's like
Um,
you have to
uh,
do it in Seattle and you have to do it at the winning franchise, even
yeah.
though it loses the charm, as you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Also, there's no other stadium to put a game in Vancouver other than BC Place, and I don't think they want to do a second game in the same stadium again, right? Like, I don't think they've done I don't think they've done a repeat yet. Like, they've done repeat cities, but no repeat stadiums. I don't believe. I
I
think
think
they've
they
all
change it
been
up every
different.
time.
Yeah.
I think once you get into the the habit of repeating stadiums, that's when you've worn out your welcome of the Winter Classic, right? Like, you
A
need to
little bit,
keep it
yeah.
fresh, right? It has
Yeah,
to be new.
yeah.
I There was that one point where, when they were renovating BC Place's roof and they had the outdoor, football field, like, right next to the P&E, like,
Empire Field, that's
yeah,
right.
like, that would've been pretty cool as, like, an outdoor, like,
Yes.
arena possibly, if you could do it in, January, February, or
Yeah,
whatever, when there's not rain, but, of
yeah.
course,
And
hard to
squeezing in
plan
maybe,
that
like,
in
another
Vancouver.
10,000 people in there somehow, because
Yeah.
that was the big thing, like, had they just I think, like, had the NHL looked at it, like, that was the other thing, the Canuck what suck one of the things that I'll never forgive the NHL for is they completely missed the Canucks window of when they were at their best to give them an outdoor game, and by
Yeah.
the time they finally got to them, it was too late. They already were well into the John Tortorella year, so they missed
They were in,
their
like, the
window.
awkward year, right? Where it was just
Yeah.
like, it couldn't have been worse timing for the
They were in
franchise to
the
have,
glitch
like,
year, yeah.
this, like, spotlight thrown on them, and, of course, when it finally is on them, the coach makes a
The
decision
worst
that will go
decision of
down
all
in
time.
history and be
Yep.
brought up for the end of ages,
I will never
basically.
not forgive him not starting Lou in that game.
Hey,
Embarrassing.
neither will
Yeah.
Lou, man, neither
Yeah.
will Lou.
Neither will Lou. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, so there's the stadium series, there's the one, I believe there's a stadium series game coming up between the Lightning and the Predators.
Mhm.
And there's also Heritage Classic between the Leafs and the Sabres, I think is coming up as well. But particularly what's interesting is talking about teams that like you miss the window sometimes. They get to the Lightning just in time. They've won
Yep.
2 cups now. This is their first outdoor game. They are the 27th team to play an NHL outdoor game. And I have a small test for you, which
Okay.
is so there are 5 remaining. There are 5 teams that have yet to play outdoors. One is obviously the Kraken. They are
Mhm.
they because being the first year. Who are the other 4?
Oof, I'm going to guess.
I'll give you
God.
we'll say, so since there's 4 teams, I'll give you 6 chances here to try and name your 4.
Okay, I'm gonna guess
One at a
the
time. Go one at a time.
let's go Florida Panthers.
Correct. That's one.
Um, ooh, I'm gonna have to say the Islanders.
Incorrect. They played in 2014. They played in a Stadium Series game
Oh,
at Yankee
okay.
Stadium.
So San Jose Sharks.
Incorrect as well.
No
You're
way.
on. They
What?
played a Stadium Series game 2015 against the Kings. They're at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara where the 49ers play.
Okay. So sorry,
All right.
this is the 5 teams then that
There are 4 teams that have not played a game that besides the Kraken. Being the
okay.
Kraken are already out of here. 4
Oh,
established teams that haven't played. One is Florida.
Her
You're on
Carolina.
that is correct. They were going to get a game this year, but they ended up asking to have it moved to next year, so they will be in there next year. But that's
Col
2.
Columbus
Correct. That's 3.
and
One more.
Arizona.
Yeah, you got it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's your 4. You scared me there for a second. You were down to your last strike there, and
Yeah.
but you pulled it out at the end there. You know what's really fascinating? So I like Columbus in particular is an interesting one because I was thinking about. I'm like, it is weird that they haven't gotten a game, like in a
A little
sense, because
bit.
I was like, there's probably some big stadiums that they can play in, right? And I realized that literally in Columbus, they have the Ohio Stadium, which is where the Ohio State Buckeyes play football.
Yeah.
That building holds 104,000 people.
Yeah. So
How
why
have they
wouldn't they?
not played a game there yet? Like, I get
Well,
that they're a small market hockey team in
but you could
particular, and that might
I
be the
mean, you could
worry.
sell tickets to the university for like $5 and pack the entire place, and it
You
doesn't
could
fucking matter.
And you can sell people on oh my God, this is a stadium that fits 100,000 people. People are going to watch that game for that alone. Like they
Yeah.
did that with the game in Ann Arbor at University of Michigan. Like maybe that's your ticket in is you go in with like, all right, it's Jackets versus like Red Wings or like Penguins or something. Like you give it like a rivalry that kind of sticks in the Ohio area. Like
Yeah.
I think like the Cleveland Browns and the Steelers have like a pretty heavy like NFL rivalry. So
Mhm.
yeah, you go with like the Penguins versus the Blue Jackets at that building. You'd sell that whole building out. And it would be a good game too. Like
Yeah.
I'm shocked that they haven't gotten there yet.
Well, NHL gonna NHL, baby. That's the way it do. Otherwise, we wanted to quickly touch on a little personal news because
Oh,
the CreaseCast got up to some activities today.
we
We
did.
we did a Crease skate with friends of the program, David Quadrelli and Riley Miner, who
Yes.
follow them on Twitch because I only picked up skates because I was following Riley's Twitch account and watching them play goalie, and I was like, man, you
I
know
don't
what?
follow that. I need to.
Yeah, it's really, I don't know, it's really fun. I was just like, oh, I want to get a pair of skates and all the pond hockey. I was like, man, I haven't done it in so long, but I might as well like just do it now while it's freezing fucking cold, and there might be still like rinks available or ponds or whatever where I can practice skating again. And so you are a more frequent skater than I, so I'll let you be
Yeah.
the judge. How did I look in my first skate since 2003? When
You
you
look
were a child?
again, considering considering all of that, you looked great for like that. Like considering how long it's been since you've skated, the fact that I honestly went in expecting you to be the board grabber. Like I expected you kind of be like, all right, I gotta like hold myself up here, but nope, you were
So
fully
did I.
skating. Yeah, there you go. You were full. Nope, you were fully able to like just skate on your own. You were totally like going at your own pace there. Like you didn't fall once.
Yeah.
You did the
I
do.
almost ate complete shit in like the final 3 minutes of the free skate.
Yeah.
Somehow managed to regain my balance, which was honestly more impressive than the fact that I was just like staying upright at all. Was
Yeah.
that I didn't fall at that moment because I had no bearings whatsoever. So that was pretty fun. But yeah,
Yeah. You looked really good. Like you were on, and also like add on to it, you were in brand new skates that you have not had like fitted for your foot yet. And so
yes.
and that in itself adds a whole other element to it where you have like, you're not used to those skates. It's not like mine where like my skates are a decade old. I've been
Yeah.
using
They're
them
worn
like
in.
yeah, they're very, very worn in. I think I got them baked on my foot like back in 2013. So
Oh hell
like
yeah.
they're very much like well loved, well used pair of skates. So I know them pretty well and I'm comfortable skating on them. And also, goalie skates. Like I was talking to Quads about it before, is that like my skates are goalie skates. And one of the things is, if you don't know the difference between player skates and goalie skates, is that not only is the blade like a little wider, because for a
Mhm.
goaltender, you're much more like you're obviously your pads are
You're-
tilted in. So
Yeah.
you're going to always be kind of like not fully on top of your blades like you are like
Mhm.
a player is.
Yeah.
They're also a lot flatter. So it's a lot easier for me to like go out and like public skate and stuff, and like easier to keep your balance on a flat blade. Whereas like the player blades are kind of curved. So there's a
Right.
little bit more like of rounded edges at on your front and back.
Mhm.
And that's tough to learn when you haven't skated like that much. Like that's one of those things where like it can sometimes mess people up, that they're not used to skating on like kind of a wobbly skate. But no, you looked really good. You looked comfortable out there.
Thanks. Thanks, bud.
You were making the turns. You didn't
I
fall
didn't
once.
hit
You didn't take out any kids.
I bumped into one kid, but that was their fault because they skated to the bench right in front of me, like at full speed.
They
They
clipped you.
completely cut me off at the last second, and yeah, I didn't. The kid didn't cry, so that, and they apologized to me. So
That's the important
that's
part.
the
Like,
important part. I didn't embarrass myself in front of like their parents or anything, so
yeah.
I had that going for me.
Yeah, there
But
you go.
otherwise, that
I
was a
think
lot of
we're gonna
fun. We're gonna probably
there's
make that a regular occurrence so long as the current protocols allow it. It
yeah.
was a bit weird being in like a very crowded area. Everyone was wearing masks and like
Yeah.
mostly distance, but it did feel like kind of bizarre that it was
Yeah.
still open in
Yeah.
general.
I'm thinking I'm gonna try and plan a way to get Cody and I, and maybe the others as well, if they want to come with us, up to like there's the pond up in North Van,
Yeah.
that I believe is frozen enough right now, at least for the next little week or so, where you can go skate, or you can go skate outdoors. And that's like one
Yeah.
of those things that's like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily quintessentially Canadian. Well, it's pretty
It's
Canadian, but
pretty
like
damn
in
Canadian.
Vancouver, it's a rarity. You don't really
Yes.
get for anyone who's not from Canada that listens to the show, or like not from Vancouver, which there are some. Shout
Yeah.
out to you guys.
If some
Yeah.
of you are from like, I don't know, if you're
Yeah.
living in the Columbus area or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
Colorado, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Um, it's like it is very rare in Vancouver that we get it that it gets cold enough here for rinks for like ponds and like river and lakes to freeze over. It often
Yeah.
is a little bit too it snows usually at least once every year, but like it never stays sustainably cold enough for
Mhm.
the rinks to like stay frozen enough that people can skate on it without it just cracking underneath you and breaking. And like even this time around, like there have been a couple like rinks where they're like where the park boards are like, hey,
Yeah, please
it's
don't.
not thin enough, it's too thin, please don't go out there, and people are kind of just ignoring it anyway.
Yeah.
But no,
I
we've
did like
actually got a few areas. Yeah.
there was like I think it was like City of Coquitlam was like they had a bunch of people being like, "Oh, there's pesky
Oh yeah,
children
Echo
on the
Lake, I think or
Como
yeah.
Lake, and they're playing hockey, and I thought you said it was too thin." And they just replied, and they're like, "Yeah, it is too thin. We'll let our park staff know how dangerous it is." Like they just don't care because they just know people are going to find a lake, and if it's frozen enough, they're gonna play. Like just
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you can only dissuade people from going out there so much. Like
yeah,
you can tell them all they want that they can't go, but they might just jump over anyway. And if something they fall in, it's kind of their fault,
yeah.
and
It's
they
like, oh
jump out their
well,
physical. It's like we told you you
tried to
couldn't.
warn you. I don't
We
know what
told
to
you you
say.
couldn't, but like, yeah, in North Van in particular, it's a little bit more up
And it's like
in
it's
elevation,
huge too,
and it's
right?
huge. So yeah, like you can go out there. There is no like thing of like, oh, it's too thin. They're like, nope, it's totally frozen enough for you to jump out there with skates. You will be fine. There won't be
Yeah.
any. You will not jump through. So hopefully we can get Cody out there for some skating, because then at least the big thing also is like obviously in public skates you only can go out there in a skate like in your skate helmet, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like you go out to the open
You
lake,
can
you can
actually
get
bring gear.
you
You
can
can
bring a
bring a
stick.
puck. You can bring
I
whatever.
Yeah, I want to. So we might have to go out there. I'll get my goalie equipment out for the first time in 2.5 years, and
Hell
let's
yeah.
see if Cody can get some pucks past me or something. We'll see what we can do.
I mean, I'm gonna say that I can probably do the Michigan, even though I've never tried it. So I will try that on
You
you and
can
score
do.
the first
You
thing.
can. I mean, if we don't have a net, you're gonna be able to. Of course, you'll be able to
No,
do the
well,
Michigan, because then it'll be like, haha, just in the air, I did it.
we'll pretend there's a net behind you, and I'll do a pretend Michigan that there's
All
posts
right,
around you.
sounds
But
good. I look forward to meeting that challenge.
yes, otherwise, folks, this is probably the end of tonight's CreaseCast or
Yeah.
this morning, whenever the fuck you're listening to it. Who cares? I don't care when you listen
It's
to it, just
6
as long as you're
p.m. when
listening.
we're recording.
Yeah.
It's
It's 6
tonight.
p.m. We're very tired. I speaking of the skate, I skated without having eaten anything or drinking any water. So when I got home and I got out of in my like parking or my parkade, I was like, oh God, my bones. My poor
Your
bones.
your poor bones. It's a workout. It's a great workout.
Fortunately, I'm like all calves and all thighs, so like I didn't feel it there at all. I only felt it in
Same.
my hips, so I was very appreciative of that. But otherwise, folks, if you want to support our hockey skating adventure, subscribe to our Patreon where we have $1 and $5 tiers. Even if at $1, you are supporting 50% of our entries to public skates, and that means the world to us. So check
Right.
that out. Check it out. Patreon.com/CreaseCast. I am Cody Sievertson, as always, on Twitter at Cody Sievertson. My website, ahlnuxharvest.com. I should, in theory, be having games to recap starting on the 6th. I think Abbotsford returns with a 4 games in 6 nights schedule, which is fucking terrible. I'll probably record maybe 2 of them because that's just way too much. Lachlan, what about you, sir? Where can they find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You can find my writing work over at CanucksArmy.com, where I write very frequently. I just wrote a whole article talking about Jim Rutherford's interview with Halford and Brough, and like the things you can take out of that going forward with this team and how they're going to be approaching the rest of the year, and looking for a GM. And yeah, you can also where else can you find me? I'm blanking on my usual bit. I feel like we haven't in a way it feels like we haven't
I
done
know.
this in a while. Yeah,
We did it Friday for 10 minutes.
we
Check
did a
out that
Friday for
episode.
10 minutes. That was an accident,
That was a-
accidental 10 minutes.
That was a banger.
That was a banger. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just go check that out. Oh, make sure you subscribe to the CreaseCast YouTube channel. We post full episodes on that. Make sure to rate us 5 stars on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify now. They have ratings on Spotify now.
Yeah, do all
We
that.
appreciate all of that as well. If you don't have the money to give to Patreon, just helping out with stars, following our CreaseCast Twitter account at the CreaseCast or on Instagram as well at the CreaseCast. That helps us out a bunch too. So go check those out.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back at it again. I don't know, soon enough. Hopefully, there should be a Canucks
Friday,
game
hopefully.
to cover. If not, we love you so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.